This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Bell with the Real Estate Office, bringing you the review of the RF401 Purchase and Sales Agreement. I want to welcome everybody, and hopefully on your screen you see the welcome and know what we're reviewing. If you need to reach out to me, my cell phone is at the bottom of this initial screen. So welcome, and I know that being in quarantine has given us some challenges to have some one-on-one time, so hopefully this will help us and allow us to do that. If you at any time, feel free to ask questions. You can message them, or you can just talk out, and that'll be okay. I'm going to go straight over to my purchase and sales agreement that I have already open. You should see it change on your screen. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got here. So obviously I am in a transaction, and I'm going to do a transaction training on this coming Tuesday. So stay tuned for the invitation today for that. But this is in Transaction Desk. It is one of my listings, 192 Abbey Lane. But as you look down, you notice that some of the things on the screen are already there, as if I went in and I populated them. What we will learn in the transaction training is the more information that you put in Wizard, the more that it's going to populate. It knows where most of the information is supposed to go, and there should be only a few things that you have left open to populate. Now, if you represent the buyer, you should always enter in through Flex MLS. So if you're coming in through Flex MLS, it'll pull all this information in for you. And then you'll go through Wizard, and as you go through the Wizard, and we'll talk again more about that on Tuesday, so it'll look like this automatically. My Wizard was not complete because I am not the one that entered this into Transaction Desk. So mine will have lots of links, and we'll have lots of time to figure out what needs to be done. So on line 3, we're gonna have a make-believe person. Hopefully, if we are doing this and we're doing it correctly, like I said, this information is going to be pre-populated for you. But you want to know why it's there. That's the ultimate goal. Why are we doing, and who is who, and why are we doing what we're doing? So the purchase and sales agreement, let me minimize this over here, see if I can. I can. Now I'm not looking at you at all. I hope I look okay. I don't know how to undo that. So the purchase and sales agreement on line 1, 2, and 3. On line 3 is the buyer. So the important part about writing the buyer's name is making sure that it matches. Now, in some transactions, it doesn't necessarily have to match on everything. But say that a person's name is James C, which you can go like this. You can go like this, where the C is here, or the and, excuse me. That's the and, sorry. C Cole, okay, like that. And you decide that he's your good friend, and you're going to put Jimmy. And now you've put in Jimmy Cole because that's what you know him by. And then you submit that. And then later, the lender comes back and says, he applied for the loan in the name of James C. Cole, and you need to do an addendum to the contract. So you need to ask up front what is their legal name and how they're going to take title. We want them to take title the same way that they are going to take title is how you should put their name on the purchase and sales agreement. Now, when I first came into real estate, I was not taught this. I was taught that I could put anything there. I could put that Jimmy's name is JC Cole, because it doesn't matter as long as that's how he's signing, but it does matter. It matters. And so the name on the deed, when we get to that, it's not to change the person here. It's if they're going to add anybody else. so it would be Jimmy, or it would be James C. Cole and Jeanette C. Cole. You know, I mean, so this is just saying that this is the person that's going to apply for the loan. So if both parties are applying for the loan, then both parties need to be privy and sign the contract.
Okay.
So if Jeanette and Jimmy are signing are applying for a loan, the contract itself should not just be in Jimmy's name. So James C. Cole, and he wants to take, his wife is also going to be on the loan. So Jeanette C. Cole. And we call her Jeannie, but Jeannie is not her legal name. Jeanette is her legal name. A lot of times we have people that are like my son Trey, his name is Harry, and we call him Trey. So you know him by, you know, Trey Fisher, but we want to make sure that Trey Fisher's name is his legal name. Is Trey your legal name? So you see people that are doing Trey. I have a guy that I worked with for a long time. His name is James, but they call him Trevor. Like, okay, they call him Trevor. So no, you know, say, oh, is that your legal name? To them, it's their legal name. It's his middle name. So we want to make sure that we are doing that. So then the seller's name is not always, it's not always what's on the MLS. It's not always what's in the CRS. The best way that I have found to find out the seller's proper name is to look at the agency disclosure, the confirmation of agency, or the disclosure itself, because there is going to be what the names of the people that you're dealing with. Okay, I find more often than not an agent might put the last name of their seller. Like when mine came in, for example, I'm pretending I'm representing the buyer right now. It came in as this. Well, that's not a name. That's not a name. So what was I trying to spell, and why is that there? I can tell you this, that on this particular seller, JP Morgan Chase, they are very particular about the J, the P, and the M. They determine their entities by if there are periods. So you can have a J period, P period, and then Morgan with a capital, and that is one whole entity of their bank. This is their USDA side, and the J, P, and the M are all together. So the only thing that I'm allowed to change is the N and the A. So a lot of people would come in and go, oh, that's not grammatically correct. I need to put a space between the J and the P. I need to capitalize the P. I need to capitalize the M. I need to put a space there. And actually, no, they would kick it back and tell you that you have the wrong seller. It's kind of an interesting little tidbit there.
Yeah. Okay.
So number 6 is all the tracts of land known as 192 Abbey Lane. And the address is in Jacksboro, Tennessee. Now, what is important about that is that sometimes I think there was something in Roane County this last week that I was looking at, and it was 143 Spinster Avenue. Well, when I went, the person was claiming that they were at 145, but 145 doesn't exist. It was 143. So they were taking, and they had a part of 143. Well, if I said that it was all the tracts of land known as 143, right? So that would include it, but it would also include the 143 and 145. So you would need to describe that a little bit more. Not all the tracts of land known as, you'd put maybe 192 has multiple pieces and you're only selling a part of 192. 192, all the tracts of land known as 192 Abbey Lane. And then you would put only the brick house. Describe it. What is it? You know, so you can subtract something out right there. Maybe it's 192 Abbey Lane, including only 5 acres.
Okay.
Or with only 5 acres. A perfect example is maybe 192 Abbey Lane is 80 acres and it has a house. 192 Abbey Lane, you can put that there or you can bring it down below. So if you wanted to put it down below, it would go on line 10. So line 7 says the city and the zip as recorded in the County Register of Deeds office. So the way that you're going to find this information is, one, you know, Jacksboro is in Campbell County. So you're going to put Campbell County on line 8. And then the deed book and page, you're going to get that off of the CRS as the recorded deed. Trustee,
How do you find that?
Okay, so you would, I'm going to go to a different page for a moment.
Okay. Okay.
Just so that you don't think I'm leaving the whole show here for a moment.
This is good because I wasn't sure where to find this, and I was looking at this thinking, what numbers are they?
So I am on CRS now. I'm on the tax records. That's where I'm at. You see, that's very familiar. This is not my profile. This is Richard's profile. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
1, 2, we're gonna go up here and do Campbell County. That was purely by accident. 192 Abbey Lane. So I'm gonna type it in like that. It's gonna pop up. And we're gonna scroll down a little bit. And this is the sales history.
Okay.
You see that right there? And this is the trustee's deed and the warranty deeds and the quit claim deeds. And then, hang on, I'm gonna go down just a little bit more for you to see what I don't want. I don't want the mortgage book and deed, book and page. You see where this is the mortgage?
Yeah.
That is not what you want. It always needs to be associated with the trustee's deed or the warranty deed. So it would be this right here. The book is W528, so we could put that in there. And then the page or document number comes after that, which is the 322 right here. You could also click on that, but the only way that you would be able to view it is if you had credits, which I do, but he doesn't. So you would go right there. So, but if you look down below, so there's 2 things going on here. See how this has a short number right below it, the 456? And then right here next to it, it has another short number, 629. This right here, it's these 2 numbers, and then this number down here is a document number when it's a long number like that. So look at the format in the prior stuff. Okay, so it's 528 and 322. I'm gonna click back over here. We're gonna type in that we went to Campbell. And we're gonna go W528 and then 322. Okay, and then there is an instrument number because we saw it, but it was really long and I don't remember it. So you would put that right there, whatever that long number is, 3200 5.
Is that the document number that you refer to?
That's the document number. That would be another instrument number.
Okay.
Okay. Now, further described as, you can put as much here or as little here as you certainly want. If we said 192 Abbey Lane had 80 acres, you would say brick house on 5 acres. And usually when you deal with acres, you want to do plus or minus. Okay. And the reason is because if you don't do plus or minus and it comes out to be 493, 4.93, you know, you don't know exactly what that survey says unless you're reading the survey. Give them a little wiggle to where we don't have to rewrite the contract. Brick house on 5 acres. Okay, and we said that there was 80 acres. Does not include 75 acres. Could put that. You could put the PIN, which is this number right here. And this is back on the tax records. Okay, I'm back on the tax records. And it's this one right here, general parcel information. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're gonna take, you can take that number, I highlight it, I can copy it, go back over here, and I can put my PIN right here, like that. Okay, so are there any questions about what can go in line 10?
I'm pretty good.
Okay, that is
Okay.
a huge question. Don't box yourself in too tight though,
Okay.
and make sure that your information is correct.
Okay.
Together with all the fixtures, landscaping improvements, collectively referred to as property. So on line 12, included a part of the property if present all attached light fixtures, bulbs, including ceiling fans. So I find all the time that people put smart, I'm finding more, that people put smart bulbs in their houses. So if I see a house and I come in and people are turning the light bulbs on and off, I think it's a great feature, but they need to say the light bulbs will be replaced with regular light bulbs that the Google light bulbs do not convey. So for example, my daughter has a light bulb in her bedroom that is done by remote on an app on my phone or on her phone. And when she's away, I might tell her, hey, get on your app and turn your light on so it looks like somebody's home, right? And so she turns her light on from wherever we're at, and that's a great thing to have. But I wouldn't want somebody to think that that light bulb conveyed.
Mm-hmm.
So if the light bulbs that you currently have when the house is showing do not convey, you want to make sure to put that in the listing agreement. You want to make sure to put it in the MLS brief so it's disclosed that those light bulbs do not convey. If there's a light fixture the great grandma somebody gave you and that you do not want that beautiful chandelier to go with the property, you should probably take it down before you ever list the property and go ahead and take it down. I see all the time when people put do not convey, but then in the end, man, that buyer really loves that chandelier and it really makes the room, and it can make for a very difficult transaction because you should have just taken it down and out of sight, out of mind. They just won't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Permanently attached plate glass mirrors. So not the frames. That's interesting. We'll read on to see what happens. Heating, cooling, plumbing fixtures and equipment, all doors, storm doors and windows, all window treatments, shutter, blinds, shades, curtains, and draperies, and all hardware. So if you have curtains hung in your living room and your great grandmother made them, and you want to make sure that you are taking them with you, you need to take them down. Just take them down. Take them down before you start showing the property. So those are questions that you should be asking your clients too. If you're the listing agent, you need to be saying, hey, are any of these curtains important to you? So I had a young lady that her daughter's bedroom, her bedspread matched her curtains. So of course she wants to take the curtains with her. And she's like, oh, when we go to sell, she didn't want me to put it in the does not convey section. She wouldn't take them down. And in the end, the buyer said, no, you cannot take those. So now she doesn't have matching curtains to her bedspread because it's the buyer's right to keep those because
Yep.
that's how it's advertised. So all hardware, all wall-to-wall carpeting, range, all range. So to me, that's like a built-in, all built-in kitchen appliances, all bathroom fixtures and bathroom mirrors. So this goes back to the permanently attached plate glass mirror versus the bathroom mirror. Okay. So the plate glass mirrors are the ones that are attached to the walls. Like in my basement, I have little 1-bys. Those are considered plate glass mirrors if they're attached. Okay. But the bathroom mirrors are, in today's world, a lot of them are framed. If it's a framed mirror, it is not considered art. It is considered a bathroom mirror. If it is there when the house is shown, it remains. I find more and more that people that have framed mirrors in their bathroom, taking them down. That's not how it works. It says it right there. All gas logs, fireplace remote controls, any entry key or master code for digital locks. Now, I don't want just the code to change the garage door code. I want the master code. So if they don't know it, they need to get it. And that's something that you need to be discussing right after you have a binding agreement date, so that you're not getting to the closing table trying to ask for a master code and they say you don't have it, and your buyers are so excited they're closing and the seller doesn't have that master code and they say, it's okay. And then it's left for your buyer to deal with. They have to figure out, they know how to change the code, but they don't have the master code, and somebody else out there has a copy of the master code. So like you could have a master code of 0000, but my code is 4932, and then I sell my house and we change the 4932 to 8515, but the master code is still valid. It's 0000, and they've given out the master code to 5 other people. The master code trumps any code that it's been changed to.
Okay.
Interesting. And that's for digital locks on the front, as well as garage doors. Swimming pool and its equipment and awnings, and permanent installation outdoor cooking grills. Now, my grill does go into my direct gas line. Okay. That does not make my grill a permanent grill. But a lot of people believe it does because it's hardwired into my gas line. I would recommend making sure that if you're the listing agent, writing down, or if you're represent the buyer, ask. Don't assume. Don't assume that that's going to stay. All security systems, components, controls, garage door openers, remote control, key entry, master codes for digital locks. Okay, I'm sorry, I went backwards. All outdoor lighting, mailboxes, attached basketball goals and backboards, TV mounting brackets, inclusive of wall mounts and TV brackets, but not including the flat screen TV. Antennas and satellite dishes, excluding components, and central back system and attachments. All other items to remain with the property at no additional cost to the buyer. Okay, so Sonia, what would you put here? Do you know?
Refrigerator.
Okay. Anything else?
I mean, appliances, if there's, so that was actually one of my questions
Okay,
because,
so I would put, you can go again as far or as simple as you want based on the situation. So if I was to put refrigerator, I don't even know if that's spelled correctly. It's not. Okay, refrigerator. Okay, and you do know that there's a stove. I would probably put stove. And if I was in a hurry, okay, as seen on and listed in MLS and photos. So if I'm in a hurry,
okay,
and I would put the MLS number. Okay, so I'd put
Okay.
maybe MLS, whatever the MLS is for Abby. Maybe it's like that. Okay. And in MLS number and photos. Okay. That's pretty good coverage, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because now it's in photos and we have it listed on the MLS. We're checking the MLS brief to make sure it's there. And if it's not, then you say, you know, that you're asking for it even though it's not on the MLS. But you could go as far to say refrigerator, they actually have a number on them. And you could say VIN number and color.
Okay.
So you could go as far as to do that. You know, maybe you don't want to do the VIN number, but you could say the color is black with a dent in right side to be able to identify the difference between that black one and a different black one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what would you not want to remain with the property? Becky, do you know what you would not want to remain with the property?
Well, like if you had like a gas grill or something that you were going to take, you might
But
want
now
to put.
we're representing the buyers right now, so I want you to think about if you're representing a buyer.
Okay, if you're representing the buyer.
Mm-hmm. You're looking at a house. Remember, the buyers want everything, and the sellers want to give nothing.
Would be like remove debris from the yard.
Okay. So I would want remove debris. That is correct. That's great. From front yard. Maybe I don't want the fridge in the garage.
And maybe like in my case with my house, I had like 8 bundles of roofing left underneath my house that are still under there because I can't get them out. So, and it's way back underneath the house. We have no idea from when they were left. I guess the last time the roof was done. But
Right.
somebody just left
So
it under there.
Some of the ideas are this: removing the debris from the front yard, refrigerator from garage to be removed, the play center to be removed, stuff under the house to be removed. Okay. Or instead of saying stuff under the house will not remain is how our terminology is here. So it could say items that will not remain with the property, debris from the front yard without the word remove, refrigerator from the garage, because it says items that will be will not remain. So if we're reading that sentence correctly, it could be as simple as this, right? We could remove these words. Play center. Could look like that. Leased items. Do you have any more questions there? Okay.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Leased items that remain with the property. Sometimes this is a gas tank. If you are putting a leased item to remain, a gas or propane tank, whether it's leased or owned, you need to negotiate the gas remaining in the tank at the time of contract. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're going to say that the gas in the propane tank remain, and then you would leave it, the rest of that done. Now under E, you would leave it undone, nothing else to be checked. Under E, it says fuel, if any, will be adjusted and charged to the buyer or credited to the seller at closing at current market prices. Do you see that?
Yes.
So but you need to address it. How is it going to be addressed? Okay, so more times than not, we don't have a propane tank. So we're going to say NA. And excuse me for a moment. Hi, Delaney. Can you say hi? Hi. Okay. All right. Go in the other room.
Hi, Delaney.
That was Sonia. Go in the other room. All right. So more times than not, it doesn't apply. And so we write NA or nothing. The buyer shall assume any lease payments as of closing. If the leases are not assumable, the balance shall be paid in full by the seller at closing, or the buyer does not wish to assume a leased item. The reason you would check this, even if you don't see a propane tank, is because they didn't disclose any. You want to make sure that there's not something that wasn't disclosed. Like maybe there's a lease on the grill and they're leaving the grill. You want to make sure that you understand that you're not assuming that. Or if you didn't check that, the buyer does not wish to assume the seller's current lease of, and you could type grill or none disclosed or anything. So that's how that could look. I check both, but at the recommendation of other agents, they're saying one or the other. I do that and that because I want to make sure that they understand that you didn't disclose anything. How am I going to know that? But I think that's double duty. Okay. So down here under purchase price, we're going to pay full price for this house because it's a great deal. And it's $122,000. Then we get down to line 46 and it talks about the financial contingency. And the financial contingency is the buyer's ability to obtain a loan in the principal amount of up to. So you have to know what loans do what and what their pre-qualification letter, which is why we need a pre-qualification letter in the beginning. You need to be able to know what that loan is doing. So do they need 20% down. If it says they need 20% down, then this number would be 80. If it says that they're USDA and they're 100%, it's 100%. If you think that they're going to go USDA, but they might not qualify, you would still put 100%. Okay? Because you would put that down there and then you would say, hey, we're trying to work another angle. But if they don't qualify for that USDA, this is your first way out. Okay? Because they don't qualify for that. It doesn't say they don't qualify for any financing. Okay? It says that they may not qualify for USDA.
So if I jump up and I do 43 through 45, those are just other ways besides the financial contingency. So a Federal Reserve Bank wire transfer, et cetera, et cetera.
They're saying that all that money shall be dispersed to the seller or the seller's closing agency. Those are the ways that it gets dispersed. So a Federal Reserve Bank wire transfer is usually your lender.
Okay.
A cashier's check issued by the financial institution could be cash, which people aren't really doing that anymore, or such other forms that is approved in writing by the seller.
Okay.
Okay, so this is all based upon lenders' customary and standard underwriting criteria in consideration of the buyer having acted in good faith in accordance with the terms below. Being unable to obtain financing by the closing date, the sufficiency of such consideration being hereby acknowledged, buyer may terminate this agreement by, now listen to that, you understand that? They can go all the way to the closing date and still get their money back. That's what that says.
Wow.
They can, and that happens more often than you think.
So
Sellers
if
will
they
have the right to request any supporting documentation. Now, they have to do it in good faith. They have to be, if they didn't supply something to the lender that the lender needed and that's why they don't qualify, I think that would be grounds to fight for the seller's money. They need to do everything in good faith that was requested of them to get that loan. And if underwriting denied it because, like right now in the circumstances we're at, they were qualified in the beginning and now the FHA guidelines say you have to have a 640 as opposed to a 580, right? Then you no longer qualify, even though you did everything you were supposed to do. But if you didn't get all the pay stubs to the underwriter to be able to make a logical decision to fund the deal, then it is your fault. So you have to have, so as the seller, you need to ask for the supporting document regarding the loan denial, not just a letter. What happened? What happened for that denial? Upon termination, the buyer is entitled to a refund of the earnest money. Okay, they're entitled to a refund of the earnest money, but only if they acted in good faith. Just because they're denied lending doesn't mean they get their earnest money back. Did they act in good faith? The lender is defined herein as the financial institution that is funding the loan. We go down and we say, okay, select the appropriate box. We're only going one way, guys. We're not saying we're going to go conventional. If they don't go conventional, we're going to go VA. We're going to go THDA. We're going to go rural development. Whatever you're doing on the front end is what you're doing. Okay. So I think we put 100%. We put 100% up here. We did. So we are going rural development or maybe THDA. So let's say that they went THDA and they decided they were going to go THDA, and in THDA they failed to take their class, therefore their loan was denied. They have a class they have to take for that sort of a loan. and their loan was denied. Do they get their earnest money back? If I was the seller, I would say, no, you failed to act in good faith and do what you were supposed to do to make that loan happen. You weren't denied because your circumstances changed. You were denied because you failed to do something.
Yeah.
So just a
Right.
thought.
Okay.
So we're going to go rural development though over here, and we're going to go down a little bit and talk about that. Buyer may apply for a loan with a different terms and conditions also. Close the transactions provided all other terms and conditions of this agreement are fulfilled. A new loan does not increase any cost charged to the seller. The buyer shall be obligated to close this transaction. If the buyer has the ability to obtain a new loan with the terms as described herein and or any other loan for which the buyer has applied and been approved. So, can I change my lender? I can. Am I closing on the same closing date? I am. Can I change the type of loan? I can. But I am changing the terms of the contract, and anytime I change the terms of the contract, it says I can do it. I need to put the seller on notification. So as the buyer's agent, I'm going to do up a notification form. I'm going to give them the lender's contact information. Do I want them to circumvent me and go to that lender and ask questions? I don't. But they have a right to ask questions. They have a right to call that lender and say, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing in good faith? Are we going to close on time? It is the lender's responsibility not to share private information. Are there lenders out there that screw up and give out too much information? There are. So you just have to know that the lender that you're connecting, that buyer is connected with, is doing the right thing. Maybe the buyer chose them, or maybe you gave them 3 options and they chose one of the 3 options. Make sure that you're dealing with people that are reliable. And if you feel like that lender is going to compromise that buyer's information at all, maybe there's a gift involved. Maybe the parent is giving a gift of money and you don't want the seller to know that because it's been kind of a sticky situation. You need to make sure that lender is keeping that confidential. Oh, we're waiting on the gift money to come in. No, we want it to be kept confidential, and you need to reach out and make sure that's being done. Make sure that they're communicating. If they're not, then you need to reevaluate the lenders that you're dealing with. Loan obligation. This gets kind of sticky here. Within 3 days of the binding agreement date, the buyer shall make application for the loan and pay for the credit report. Just because they're pre-approved doesn't mean that they made application. Application and being pre-approved are 2 very different things. Okay? Application is something that you actually put in all your documentation. A pre-approval or pre-qualification letter could be as simple as plugging in how much money you make, not including your debt, and just the simple things. Actually making application is supplying all the documentation they need to support the loan. They need to make sure that they're making application. They need to pay for their credit report so that they know that all the debt that they talked about has been supplied. Buyer shall immediately notify the seller or the seller's representative of applying for the loan. Provide the lender's name and the contact information, and that the buyer has instructed the lender to order the credit report. Such certification shall be made via the notification form or the equivalent written notice. Know this, that I actually have a form that I fill out when I send it back that I can supply to you. It's just in the email form that says the simple stuff, like who the lender is, all the contact information, who the closer is, all the contact information, what date, how many days we have for a home inspection, if the home inspection has been scheduled, requesting verification that the utilities are turned on. It's all on one form, what the closing date is, and who the contact information for those pertinent people, like the lender, like the closer, because the buyer side, Those are things that you need. Now, I like using that form and sending it back with the executed contract so that everybody knows what my expectation is. They know this is what I expect. I'll forward you guys a copy of that, or if anybody watches this outside of this, they can request a copy. You can copy it and make it your own. I just want you to realize that it's important for everybody to get on the same page. Sometimes people don't want to go digging through the contract. They should want to, but this is a way to put everything on in one location in an email form, not on a PDF that you have to open, so that you can say, hey, this was the binding agreement date, and this is now we're on day 9. So you actually can just pull it up as opposed to having to go to the contract. You can also do that in Transaction Desk, just so you know. And I use a thing if you want to look at a free Gmail add-on. Is called Folio, Folio. And Folio is also a way that you can manage your stuff, to make it to where you can put in all the dates, and it'll send you reminders that, oh, this is the last day for the home inspection. Have you met all contingencies?
That's great.
And then you can go in and make it and check it. So I don't know if either of you have ever used Folio, but I love Folio.
Me too.
So, and you can add people to it so they also get the reminders. Yeah. So loan obligations, we're starting number 2. Within 14 days after the binding agreement date, the buyer shall warrant and represent to the seller via the notification form or their equivalent written notice that the buyer has secured evidence of hazard insurance, which will be effective at closing. So it's your job as the buyer's agent to get that to the seller. Okay, so you need to be putting that on in your folio, or you need to be putting it in your transaction desk to know when is the 14th day, and have you said, I need you to price out hazard insurance. So why is this important? Other than you want them to make sure that they've done this, the lender will also do it, okay? The lender will say, hey, you need to get hazard insurance and I need that. And that's usually part of the underwriting process. But maybe if you do it on day 1 or right at the end of the home inspection period, you can find out things about the house that you might not have known. Say that there was a hailstorm and the prior owner was paid to fix the roof and they never fixed the roof, but yet they took the payout and the roof is still in need of repair. If a person comes out to quote the hazard insurance and they look at the roof and they know that there was a claim, they can deny hazard insurance on a home. So that seller better replace that roof, because now you've been denied hazard insurance. So that's one reason why it's good to do the hazard insurance. Other than the fact that you need it for closing, you want to know whether the home is actually eligible. Sometimes, go ahead.
When you say hazard insurance, is it the same thing as home insurance or is it different?
Homeowners insurance.
Okay.
So homeowners insurance, you also need, maybe it's in a flood zone and maybe you need a rider that you have flood insurance. Maybe you didn't catch it. So the way that you know if something is in a flood zone, we're going to go back over here to the CRS tax data for a minute. Okay, we're still here on Abbey Lane. We go all the way down to the bottom. So it looks like I'm going really, really fast, but I'm not. Okay, right down here, FEMA flood zones. You see that? This is an undetermined, but usually there's a determined. An area that is located in a community or county that is not mapped on the FEMA. So that is where you could see if it was, and so there's areas in Oliver Springs and Clinton that are in flood zones. So you would want to check the flood zones, because if it's not disclosed on the MLS brief, you would want to know. You may need to have flood insurance before we ever even write this offer. You might want to check on what that's going to cost you. But in our market, with sales going so well, you may write the offer and then come to find out it's an extra $1,000 a year and it's too much for your buyer, and you just have to cancel it because you don't want to have flood insurance.
Okay.
Okay, so that's probably something new there. So now we're back on where we are within the 14 days. We're under B. I'm sorry, young lady, you need to leave the room while I'm on the computer, okay? I know. I'm sorry. Go find your daddy, okay? He's in the backyard. Go to the backyard, please. Yeah. Go to the backyard. I know it's because you guys didn't let her out. All right, so the buyer has notified the lender of intent to proceed and has the available funds to close per the signed loan estimate. Okay. And the buyer has requested the appraisal to be ordered and affirms the appraisal fee has been paid. So this is within 14 days. It used to be within 5, and then it was within 10. Now it's within 14 days. So you can pay that appraisal fee up to the 14th day to make sure that you've gotten through your home inspection. Okay. It would be really nice as buyer's agents if, when these steps are done, that you're just automatically updating the seller. Now,
Okay.
that's the difference between a good agent and a great agent. The great agent keeps the seller's agent informed. The seller's agent doesn't have to chase you. Something happens with the loan and the buyer says, hey, I just paid for my appraisal. Okay, great. Has the lender received it? Yes, the lender's received it. Has the lender ordered it? Yes, the lender's ordered it. Hello, Mrs. Seller's agent. I just wanted to drop you a line, let you know that the appraisal has been paid for and ordered. Please be expecting a phone call from the appraiser in the next few days. If you would, let me know that the appraiser reached out to you and if you set an appointment with them. So many times, us as buyer's agents, we tell them the information and then we never hear back, and the next thing you know, the appraisal's done and over with and we didn't even know. So you want to request that information. That's the difference between good and great. Okay. All right. Line 76, buyer shall pursue qualifications for approval on the loan diligently in good faith, continuing to submit the documentation requested by underwriters is what that means. Number 4, buyer shall continually and immediately provide requested documentation, same. Number 5, unless otherwise stated in this agreement, the buyer represents that the loan is not contingent upon the lease or sale of any other real property, and the same shall not be used on the basis for loan denial. So that's been added in the last couple of years. I had a buyer that really wanted a house and it was a foreclosure, and the foreclosures will not allow them to back out of a contract. They will not sign a contract that is contingent upon a sale of a house a lot of times. So this particular seller would not sign it. So I told them that get your complete documentation, get your house on the market, know when it's going to close, let's write the offer and do it all simultaneously. Any of those things could have gone crazy sideways, but they didn't. But say that their house didn't sell, then I would have encouraged them to do a bridge loan. Say that they didn't want to do a bridge loan and their house didn't sell. They cannot use that for the basis of the loan denial because they couldn't carry both loans. So you have to be very careful. My people on 110 Carson, they were selling their house and their house was going to close and it fell out of contract. At the same time, he was pursuing a bridge loan for this very reason, because he knew he would be in breach of contract. Line 6, the buyer shall not intentionally make any material changes to the buyer's financial condition, which would adversely affect the buyer's ability to obtain this loan. Okay, so what does that mean? We're not buying a car. We're not buying new furniture. We're not going on a cruise. We're not doing anything that will incur debt. So what if every month I pay off my credit card? So all month long I charge on my credit card. Usually we close on a house about 30 days, and the period of a credit card is about 30 days. Say I'm an over-the-road truck driver. So I could rack up $3,000 in debt on my credit card, right? You need to be asking the lender if it is telling them to ask the lender if it is a smart move for them to be charging all their gas during this time frame. Even though in 30 days it'll be paid off, if you close on day 26 and the underwriter reviews on day 23, now they have $3,000 more in debt. We know that it's going to be paid off in 7 more days. But the record reflects that their debt has increased and they may not qualify. Kind of an interesting concept there. Be careful of, because it's a great thing to have credit. But if you're up too high on the credit, it can cost you a loan. Your debt to income ratios are super important. So, should the buyer fail, line 82, should the buyer fail to timely comply with section 2A, 1 and 2 above and provide notice as required, now. So the buyer's agent, the good buyer's agent, did all of the things above, but they what? They forgot to notify the seller, because we're really busy and we're doing all this stuff and we put it back on somebody else and that person didn't do the notification. The seller has the right to make written demand for compliance. So they want to know, did you make application? Did you get hazard insurance? Did you get the appraisal? Did you pay your appraisal fee? Right? If I, as the seller's agent, and am asking you those things and you did not tell me, you didn't do your job as a buyer's agent. Okay? Correct it and move forward. Get them the information that they're requesting. Doesn't mean you're a bad agent. It means you're a good agent, but I want you to be a great agent.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you one quick question about equivalent written notice. What exactly does that mean? An email?
An email.
Okay.
I prefer equivalent written notice as an email. It can be a text message. Text messages are a little harder to prove. So you want it to be something that you can prove that you did it.
Okay.
If a buyer does not furnish the seller the requested documentation within 2 days after such demand for compliance, the buyer shall be considered in default and the seller's obligation to sell is terminated. That means that they forfeit their earnest money. Have I had this happen? One time. And it wasn't,
Wow.
it was one time. It only takes one time for you to figure it all out. And the buyer lost their earnest money and the seller had a backup offer. And it was for $5,000 more than our offer. So they were doing everything they could to push us to make sure that if we dropped the ball, that they could immediately take that other offer.
Yeah.
Always think as if somebody is waiting in the wings to swoop in and take your deal.
Okay.
Now, it's not going to be somebody in our office because as ethical as they can get. So, but you got to remember that there's somebody waiting in the wings for that deal that you just got. Financial contingency waived box. They consider it all cash, and they put all cash, etc. So we're going to read that because I want to know what etc. means. Because I had a discussion with somebody in our office about this, and we had two very different opinions. Buyer's obligation to close shall not be subject to any financial contingency. Okay. Financial contingency. Somebody said hard money is cash. Hard money is a loan that you get that is a short-term loan that they give you all cash fairly quickly. You give it to them, then you refinance it and give them their money back, or you sell it fairly quickly. It's very high interest rate. You can do a lot of research on a hard money loan. Hard money loan, there is a financial contingency. You are paying interest on that loan, and it is not considered all cash. Okay. Say that you have a home equity line of credit. The only way that that is considered all cash is if the home equity line of credit has already funded, meaning at any point it's an open line of credit. I can write a check off of that and it is available. That is considered all cash. If you haven't made application for the home equity line of credit, if you're like, well, I can just go and get a home equity line of credit, then you still have a financial contingency on that loan. The buyer reserves the right to obtain a loan. The buyer will furnish proof of available funds. The buyer reserves the right to obtain a loan. So, buyer will furnish proof of available funds to close in the following manner. Hear this.
Kimberly, excuse me, but I'm going to have to be excused for just a minute, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
So the buyer reserves the right to obtain a loan. Just because they say that they're all cash and then they decide to get a loan, there is nothing wrong with that. But the first thing that you need to do is you need to notify the seller's agent. Okay, so we are providing the information within 5 days after the binding agreement. Should the buyer fail to do so, the seller, has the ability to demand it, and you have 2 days to be in compliance. It should be with the offer. If they're cash, send it with the offer. Buyer shall be considered in default if they don't. On line 94, in the event this agreement is contingent upon an appraisal, the buyer must order the appraisal and provide seller with the name and telephone number of the appraisal company and proof the appraisal was ordered within 5 days of the binding agreement date. Now, you can get that from your lender. Usually, though, they contact the seller before they contact you, just so you know. But as soon as it's in the system, it'll tell you who, the lender can tell you who, and you can supply that. But usually before you can ever get it to as soon as it hits the system, it's all usually in an automated system and it rotates through. As soon as it's in the system, they immediately call that seller. That's why you want the seller to tell you. But if for some reason they haven't, you do need to, as soon as they make written demand, you need to call the lender and say what is going on, and we need to go ahead and get that on the books and find out who it is and what they're doing. And so you can get that from the lender, be in compliance. On line 100, it's the appraisal. This agreement is not contingent upon the appraisal, or the more likely one, this agreement is contingent upon the appraised value either equaling or exceeding the agreed upon purchase price. If the appraised value is equal to or exceeds the purchase price, this contingency is satisfied. In consideration of the buyer having conducted an appraisal, the sufficiency of such consideration being hereby acknowledged, if the appraised value of the property does not equal or exceed the purchase price, the buyer shall promptly notify the seller via the notification form or written equivalent notice. Buyer shall then have 3 days to either waive the appraisal via the notification form or equivalent notice, or terminate the agreement by giving notice to the seller via the notification form or equivalent written notice. Upon timely termination, buyer is entitled to a refund of the earnest money. In the event that the buyer fails to do either, to either waive the appraisal or terminate the agreement as set forth, this contingency is deemed satisfied. Thereafter, failure to appraise shall not be used for the basis of loan denial. So, and the seller has the right to ask for documentation. So if that's the case, you can also, everything is negotiable. You can always go back and ask for it to be negotiated. Then you would make an amendment to the contract and change whatever it is that the purchase price is going to be less, or that they're going to split it down the middle, that it didn't appraise and we're going to split it down the middle, but it needs to be done within 3 days. If not done within 3 days, then you need to go ahead and terminate the agreement so that the person can get their earnest money back. Just because you're negotiating doesn't waive that 3 days. Closing expenses. Seller shall pay existing loans, liens affected of the property, including all penalties, release preparation costs, applicable recording costs, and any incurred or outstanding association. Do you understand all of that?
I mean, not really, but I figured that's kind of more on the lender side of all those little things. Closing fee, document preparation fee, attorney fees, that's kind of all included with the lender.
I had someone argue with me about deed prep because my particular bank puts on there that the deed prep shall be paid for by the buyer. And they're like, but in the contract it says this. And I'm like, yeah, but on the addendum, it says that the buyer is going to pay the deed prep. So sometimes these fees up here can be paid for by the buyer, and some of these down here can be paid for the seller. So it's like if it was the deed prep, it would be under title expenses, deed prep to be paid for by the buyer. You just put it right there. Buyer's expenses. So there's all these things that the buyer's expenses can be. Okay. So under all the buyer's expenses, this is a buyer's expense under closing expenses. So people refer to closing expenses as closing costs. I like the word closing expenses. Okay, because it's exactly what's stated in our contract. So you would put on line 3, 144 under number 3, you could put right there, seller to pay up to this computer is different than mine. Okay. 5,400 in buyer's closing expenses, closing costs, including prepaid items. A prepaid item is something that the buyer is paying prior to closing. So it could be a home inspection, it could be a termite inspection, it could be a survey, it could be anything that is prepaid. Prepaid items could also be, and that's something that you're paying before closing. Could also include if you're paying up to 3 months of reserves on your taxes and insurance, that is also called can be considered a prepaid item. Okay.
Okay.
You know, this 146 through 153 is kind of self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
On line 154, you're going to put the number of days. With my REOs, we want 2 days after binding agreement date. And we're going to have it be Villa Title Insurance, and their address is in Pennsylvania. And we want a minimum of $1,000. Any questions there? All right, so failure to receive the earnest money. The buyer has, if they have a bounced check, or if they fail to drop the money off, you have 1 day to make a demand. If they don't deliver it immediately to who's supposed to hold it within 1 day, then it's terminated. Okay. And move forward on that. Handling of the earnest money. It's either applied at closing or upon a written agreement signed by all parties having an interest in the funds. So I took this to mean that we can take earnest money and apply it differently. Well, then it's no longer earnest money. Like, for example, upon an executed contract, we agree that the earnest money is to be released to the seller and that it's non-refundable. Well, then it's no longer earnest money, because earnest money is to be held in a non-interest bearing account. So don't make that mistake.
Okay.
Okay, Kimberly, I have a question. Okay, this deal that I'm working on right now, the earnest money is in the mail from the buyers to here. So does that mean you can take it more than 1 day? I thought it was like you had a certain number of days to get the earnest money in.
You do. It's up here. It's not there. It's up here. Right here.
That's what you put.
Okay.
Right here.
Okay.
Make sure that if you know that it's going to come from mail, that there's enough time.
Okay.
So it can be used by court order from the arbitrator, the earnest money, or reasonable interpretation of the agreement. So most, by that right there, most brokers will say, well, I don't agree with the other broker. If they want that money, they need to take me to arbitration. And if me as a broker, if I decide that you're in the middle of a deal and you guys are fighting over the earnest money and the earnest money is held by our office, I have the ability, as long as I can back my stuff up, to check it and release it to your buyer. Now, should I do that? No, I should look at everything to make sure that the buyer is in the right.
Mhm.
We need to look and see who is ethically correct. There's lots and lots of companies out there that go ahead and release it because they think that we will not come back and fight them and arbitrate that money because it's cost and time.
Mhm.
Just know that. I can also use that money to file the interpleader. So if we're holding the money and I feel like that we're gonna do something with that money and it's gonna be a big old argument, I can take it and I can take all of it and file the interpleader to fight. So I can use it. 179, the holder shall be reimbursed for and may deduct any of the funds for interpleader, its cost and expense, including reasonable attorney's fees. This is why you need to make sure that there's enough money. 500 is barely enough money to file the interpleader, let alone attorney fees. The prevailing party in the interpleader action shall be entitled to collect from the other party the costs and expenses reimbursed to the holder. So whoever wins has to pay everything. No party shall seek damages from holders for any matter arising out of the related performance holder duties under this earnest money section. The earnest money shall not be dispersed prior to the 14th day after deposit unless written evidence of clearance of the bank is provided. So this means that if you have earnest money, and you are doing a cash deal, we cannot close in 10 days. We cannot close in 7 days unless you have gone and checked to make sure that their check has cleared and that it is not going to bounce. So their earnest money, you're selling a $30,000 house and they decide that they're going to put in earnest money $30,000. They put it in $30,000 and you close in 7 days and the company, the real estate office that is holding the earnest money writes a check to the title company for $30,000 and you go and you close on day 7 and on day 8 the check that they wrote your office bounced.
That's not good.
Definitely
Now the
not.
people are gone. The only way for the real estate office to get that money back is to put a lien against that house.
Mhm.
An unencumbered lien. So just be very, I mean, you can take them to court and do all kinds of stuff, but know that's important to show proof that it is 100% cleared. So by this, it says 14 days.
Okay. Can I ask you a question about B 173? When it says upon a written agreement signed by all parties having an interest in the funds, what exactly does that mean?
It would mean that you, if there is a way that maybe they wanted part of the earnest money to go for repairs prior to closing, and then it would be non-refundable. So then say that we're holding $10,000 in earnest money and that we've agreed to go ahead and use some of that earnest money that would be credited towards the seller's proceeds to go ahead and allow them to use that money to do repairs and it be non-refundable.
Okay.
You could sign an agreement like that. Okay.
Okay.
Line 185, closing proration, special assessments, and warranty transfers. Closing date to be. So we have a little bit of a disagreement here. Some of us do on line 188, or on such earlier date as may be agreed upon by the parties in writing. Some people agree that if you're all at the closing table and everything's signed, that's agreed upon in writing. But what if the title company calls your buyer and your buyer thinks that you're in the loop and the buyer and the seller show up to the closing table and they close on a property, and then you get a phone call from your buyer saying, why weren't you there? If everybody and all agents know that they have to agree upon it in writing, nobody gets left out of the loop. So I've been on both sides of that, as the seller's agent and as the buyer's agent, where I didn't show up for closing and they wondered why I wasn't there. It's because I wasn't invited. Didn't know. Didn't know that you changed the date. Have it on my calendar for Friday at 5, and you're closing Thursday at 1. So if we're agreeing in writing, nobody gets left out of the loop. So,
Okay.
possession at closing or agreed upon by temporary occupancy agreement. Not going to go over the temporary occupancy agreement right now.
Okay.
Just a moment. Delaney. Danielle. So the green belt, there's not very many areas that have green belt tax assessors. If you come across that on line 200, did I skip over anything that you needed to see? Prorations. Sorry.
Prorations. What exactly is prorations?
Prorations, you know, where taxes are paid by the seller up to the date of closing. Okay. And rents are due up to, if it's a rental property, they're due up to the seller to the date of closing. And then everything else for, like, if we closed on the 4th day of the month and I collected rent for something on the 1st, the seller gets rent 1 through 4 because we're closing on the 4th. And I am to bring the rest of the rent prorated on the closing disclosure for you for the rest of that month. Taxes are the same way. I pay the taxes if we close on the 4th day of May. The seller pays the taxes all of May through the 4th day of May, all the months, the 4th day of May. And then the buyer is responsible for the remaining of the year.
Okay.
Okay. Credits.
Okay.
Greenbelt, we would cover a greenbelt. If you have a property that is done as a greenbelt, come and let's discuss it. That they're very rare. I've had 2 in my career. So not going to go over that just because it's not a really prevalent thing. 211, special assessments. Special assessments provide or levied prior to closing date shall be paid by the seller or prior to closing unless otherwise follows. Special assessments would be if you're in a PUD or if you're in an HOA and they have levied money to fix say the HOA is $100 a month, but then they did an assessment, a special assessment to be able to fix the private roads. And that is an extra $100 a month for 2 years. That could be a special assessment. So you're at $2,400 for a special assessment for your portion of fixing the road, the private road in front of your house. And so when the person puts it in, they say, oh, the HOA is $200 a month. No, the HOA is $100 a month and the special assessment is $100 a month. And the seller is required to pay that special assessment off before closing because it is considered a lien against the property.
Okay, so that's basically saying the seller needs to pay all that.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, they could do something that's agreed upon in writing below on line 213, but usually you want them to pay it off. If they don't have the money to pay the $2,400, then you need to figure something out to try to be flexible there.
Okay.
Warranties and transfers. The seller, at the option of the buyers and the buyer's cost, agree to transfers the seller interest in any manufacturer's warranties, service contracts, termite bond or treatment guaranteed, or similar warranties in which there may be a transferable to the buyer. Okay.
Mhm.
Usually, so this could be that maybe they did some block repair and there is a lifetime warranty on that block repair. If there's a lifetime warranty, you want to see if there is a transfer fee. I've been hit with transfer fees at closing before. So if they say that there's a warranty, you need to be asking the other agent, the seller's agent, is there a transfer fee? And who's going to pay that transfer fee? Because here it says the buyer at the buyer's cost. Well, whoops, you told me that there was no transfer fee. If you're disclosing that there was no transfer fee, then the seller should be responsible for it. So make sure you know if you're transferring stuff, what that is. Association fees, you need to get the accounting of all of that, which is on 217. You want to know what fees, what's the administration fees, you know, if there's anything that they can tell you, you want them to tell you. Title and conveyance. Seller warrants at the time of closing, the seller will convey or cause to be conveyed the buyer's assignees, good and marketable title to said property by general warranty deed, subject only to zoning, setback, subdivision. So they're saying, hey, it's only these. And if we can meet all these, then we can be issued a warranty deed. If the title exam, closing, or loan survey pursuant of Tennessee code, boundary line survey, or other information discloses material defects, buyer may, at buyer's discretion, accept the property with the defects, or 2, require remedy of such defect prior to closing. This means that if there is a title defect, you can close with a title defect. Okay, that doesn't change that it is a marketable title. If you look on line 225 through 230, good marketable title is zoning, setback, subdivision, and encumbrances. That's it. Title defect is completely different. Well, we don't have a good marketable title. No, you do. You have a zoning, you have a setback, you have a subdivision, and you have all the leases, restrictions, and easements. You have marketable title. You have a defect on the title. Doesn't change that it's marketable. A defect on the title means that they're not going to insure it. So we have to figure out whether we're willing to move forward with a defect on the title. Right now, I own 2 properties that have defects on titles. It's not stopping me from putting regular insurance on them. It's not stopping me from renting them out. It's not stopping me from doing anything. If I go to sell that property, I need to fix the defects.
So give me an example of a defect.
I bought a house that had 11 heirs. The bank foreclosed on the original person after she died, but they didn't foreclose on all 11 heirs. They only foreclosed on 10. So I have 10 signatures and I'm missing a signature. Now, if that heir dies, the right that it's beautiful. The right that those other children have, you know, that 11th heir dies and he has 4 kids. Now I'm having to deal with those 4 kids. Okay. Do I have it insured and do I have the title insured? I certainly do. So if those kids come back against me, I still have money and the title insurance has to pay out. So they gave me title insurance because it was the bank.
Okay.
Okay. Line 245, deed, name on the deed. If Sonia and I wanted to buy a property together, but I just wanted to be the only person carrying the loan, My name would be over here on the contract itself as the purchaser. The name on the deed would be Kimberly and Sonia. And then you want them to consult with the closing agency. Now, somebody once told me at the recommendation of the closing attorney. The problem with that is this, is that when the seller goes, if the seller is a mail away and they have to create a deed, that title attorney or closing attorney better be getting in touch with them so that they know what names need to go there. On foreclosures, they rely on line 245 heavily, and they need you to put the name in there to make sure that they can request the deed as soon as the document. It takes sometimes up to 3 weeks to get the deed signed by the seller. We need to have that document so that we know what to put there. Association lien payoffs, payoff association assessments, which we talked about. They need to be paid off 7 days before closing unless otherwise agreed upon. Lead-based paint, we know when to check here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Inspections. Buyer's right to make inspections. All right, I have nobody helping me, so I am going to pause. I wonder if I can stop and come back. I think I can stop and come back.
You should.
Leave. Maybe just leave and come right back.
Okay.
I'm gonna just let you guys look at the wall for a minute.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
So have you had a good morning?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, I am. We got a lot more to go through. So I'm gonna grab just a drink really quick.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
I think I'm going to do the same thing since everybody else is.
Yep.
I'll be right back too.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, life isn't getting much easier, but I don't, it just kind of is what it is. Okay. Buyer's right to make inspection. All inspections reports included, but not limited to, the home inspection report, those required recommended in the home inspection report, wood destroying, insect infestation inspection report, septic inspection, and well water test are to be made at the buyer's expense unless otherwise stipulated in this agreement. The parties hereto agree that in the event the buyer shall elect to contract a third party inspector to obtain a home inspection, said inspection shall be conducted by a licensed home inspector. However, nothing in this section shall preclude the buyer from conducting their own inspection. Okay.
So they can do their own inspection. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Seller shall cause all utility services and any pool, spa, or similar items to be operational so that the buyer may conduct inspections. Buyer,
When they,
go ahead.
a quick question for you. When an inspector comes out, it said foundations. An inspector really wouldn't know if there is foundation issues with the property upon
No, but
examination.
they do a recommendation.
Mhm.
So it says that right here on line 255, including but not limited to the home inspections, those required recommendations in the home inspection report. So maybe you're under your inspection period and there's a foundation issue with the wall outside, like it looks like it's leaning, and the inspector says, I think you need to have this inspected by a structural engineer.
Mhm.
Now that inspection has been brought into the inspection period. Say the home inspector never said a thing about that. You
Mhm.
decide that you want to have that inspected. Then you need to say under the buyer inspection on his or her own behalf, they have elected to do that.
Okay.
And it shall be become, but you got to put them on notice. You can't just decide,
Okay.
I'm
Got
going to
it.
have this inspection. You need to say, I'm having this additional inspection based on the inspection.
Okay.
The initial
But you
inspection,
need,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, but you need to do that during that inspection phase, at least notify them during that phase. If you
No,
did it outside of that time
the
frame,
inspection outside the time frame, you need to have the seller agreeing to it.
okay.
You need to extend that period.
Got it.
All right, on line 272, the initial inspection, the buyer or his or her inspector's representatives shall have the right and responsibility to enter the property during normal business hours for the purpose of making inspections and or test of the property. Buyer and or his inspector representative shall have the right to perform a visual analysis of the condition of the property, any reasonable access installation components, the operation of the property systems. Okay. A lot of times this is just your initial inspection is when you go in and you show the property. Or if there's a second showing and they're bringing a friend with them, or they're bringing their builder with them, or they're bringing an inspector with them, just to say, hey, is it worth writing an offer on? Your initial inspection usually happens before we ever even write the offer.
Okay.
Sometimes they don't, though. So wood destroying insect infestation inspection report. It shall be buyer's responsibility to obtain at the buyer's expense. You see that?
Yep.
The foregoing expense may be subject to governmental guidelines relating to VA loan addendum if applicable. So buyer's responsibility at the buyer's expense. Oops. The buyer's agent forgot, and it's required somewhere for something. Now, on a VA loan, it's usually the seller ordering it on the behalf of the buyer. Or the seller is paying for it and it's included in the closing fee, closing costs that they're paying, but the buyer is ultimately the one responsible for obtaining the appointment and getting it handled. Okay, so it still all falls back on the buyer, even if the seller's paying for it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to put right here if you want it to exclude a building. Maybe there's a barn and you know the barn's falling down. You're going to put the barn there. Barn. Buyer's inspection resolution. Within blank days after the binding agreement date, the buyer shall cause to be conducted any inspections provided herein. So some people put 10. Some people put 15. including not limited to the wood destroy infestation report, and shall provide written notice to such sellers described below. In the event that the buyer fails to timely make such inspections and respond with said time frame as described herein, the buyer shall forfeit any rights provided under the section, and in such case shall accept the property in its current condition, normal wear and tear. Accepted. In said notice, buyer shall either, in consideration of the buyer having conducted the buyer's good faith inspection herein, sufficient of consideration, they can just give a list of objections and all money is returned to the buyer. They say, I don't want it. There's water in the basement and I'm not willing to, I don't even want it. I don't even want it because I don't even want to try to fool with it. Even if you fix it, it'll never be right. You have a buyer like that? I've had buyers like that. It'll never be right. Okay, let's just get out of it. I know it scares you. Or they can say, oh, the water in the basement doesn't scare me. I'm accepting it as is. And we're going to go ahead and put them on notice that I'm accepting it as is in the way that it is, and I don't want the seller to do anything. Or we can negotiate. Okay. And we're negotiating. I'm giving them a list and we're going to see, and I'm going to give them supporting documentation. Now, so supporting documentation, be very careful with that. I think the seller should be privy to the whole home inspection. But it's not my decision. It is the seller's decision what supporting document they want. So you need to ask them. If you represent the seller, you need to say, okay, do you want me to request the whole home inspection? Just the parts that are pertaining to these items? What do you want? And make sure you have that discussion on day one of the home inspection so that you can tell the other agent what you want. Don't get into a situation where they send you everything and then you got a ticked off seller because you gave them the whole thing. Okay?
Because if they accept the whole thing and they read the whole thing, they have to disclose it if the deal falls through. Is that correct?
Correct. The resolution period, the seller and the buyer shall then have a period of blank days following the receipt of the above stated written list to reach a mutual agreement as to the items to be repaired and replaced. So you're dealing with an agent that you can't get them on the phone to save your life. It's every other day. You can't do anything. You may want to be thinking about, took them 4 days just to acknowledge that you even sent an offer. You may want to think about how many days you need. You could need anywhere from 3 to 5. I've seen this number be as high as 7. Okay. The parties agree to negotiate repairs in good faith during the resolution period. In the event that the seller or the buyer do not reach mutual agreement in the resolution period, they can extend the resolution period via an amendment to the agreement. You have to amend the agreement to stay in contract. If you don't agree, then you can terminate it and the buyer is entitled to the money because you didn't agree. You can also waive all inspections. Okay, line 321, final inspections. Buyer and or his inspector representatives have the right to conduct final inspection of the property on the closing date or within. Man, I want it on the closing day. So I always do 0 to 1. 1 day prior, I usually will take the buyer out 1 day prior. I'll ask them if they want to go with me the day of closing. I always inspect the property 30 minutes prior to closing.
So what happens? So what happens if during your final I guess my question to you is if you had all those repairs done on your final inspection, are you going to be?
The final inspection and inspection of repairs are 2 different things.
Okay.
So on the bottom of your inspection amendment, your repair amendment on the bottom of it, It
Let's
says
say it.
repairs to be completed 7 days to closing, available for inspection.
Okay, got it.
Totally different day.
Okay,
We're doing that prior to this.
okay, got it.
Agents don't like that either for whatever reason. Like, I'm like, okay, are the repairs done? Yes. Okay, we're coming to inspect. Well, I thought that was your final inspection. Well, we did that a week ago. You mean to tell me that a raccoon didn't get in the roof line and have babies? I mean, or a pipe didn't bust and the basement flooded? Anything can happen. We want to make sure that we're laying our eyes on that property to make sure that that we're not getting our buyers into a situation. Right? And all we're doing is advising our buyers. They're making the decision. All we're doing is advising our sellers, and the seller is making the decision. We're going at the seller's direction, not our own. Never our own.
Okay.
The buyer's due diligence options. The buyer, if any of the matters are concerned to the buyer should address this concern, specific contingency, and the special stipulations. If they're going to do a survey and a flood certification, they're going to do insurability, you know, outside of what we've already talked about. Maybe an earthquake, or maybe they need whatever. If they're going to do water supply and test the water, or if they're going to check for septic, or if they know that there's a title exception and that's an issue, then you need to put that, anything above and beyond the inspections themselves. Maybe you're going to do a due diligence on the school system, and you want to make sure that it's zoned for the right school. And you put that down there. It's contingent upon it being in Jefferson Middle School. And you put it down there. Okay, that's an extra due diligence so that you absolutely know for certain. Maybe they're rezoning Hardin Valley and Carnes. That would have been a time for extra due diligence when they did that.
Yep.
Put it down there. Make sure that it's going to be zoned Hardin Valley Academy. You put that in special stipulations. That is not part of your inspection period. It is an additional due diligence item. If it is not listed in the inspection period, you need to make sure that you're adding it. As you know, you can say under the inspection period, the buyer shall, you know, additionally have the ability to research the school district, the rezoning of Hardin Valley. Okay. So the disclaimer, this is the same disclaimer that is on the disclaimer, that we have a disclaimer paper. It says that we are not held liable. And that includes me as your broker, it includes the company, and that we have the responsibility to make sure that they can get the survey and the home inspections and insurability and all of that, but that ultimately that it's the buyer's responsibility. Do you have any questions on that 348 through 366?
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
On 367, brokerage, as specified by a separate agreement. The brokerage agreement is your listing agreement or your buyer's representation agreement. The seller agrees to pay the listing, right? The listing broker at closing. And so it's as separate agreement. Brokerage could also refer to a compensation agreement. We're considered third party. Default. Should the buyer default here under the earnest money shall be forfeited for the damages of the seller, shall be applied to a credit against the seller's damages. That means the buyer defaults and there's no real reason other than they just don't want the house anymore, that the seller can go after more damages than just the earnest money. I had this just happen. And the seller actually sued the buyers. They ended up settling for $5,000, but I think that they could have gone for the full value of the house. That would be an attorney question. I'm not an attorney and I don't want to be. The seller may elect to sue in contract for tort or additional damages or specific performance to the agreement or both. Should the seller default, the buyer's earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. In addition, the buyer may elect to sue. The buyer really wanted that house and now they have nowhere to go and they sold their house. In the event that any party hereto shall file suit for breach of enforcement of this contract, the prevailing party shall be entitled to recover the cost of such enforcement, including reasonable attorney fees. Everything. Think of everything.
Can I ask you a question kind of about that?
Yep.
So if I had a buyer and something went wrong with their financing, let's just say they couldn't come up with their 20%. But they put it out there and they did all of their due diligence to try to make it happen.
Did they have their 20% prior to being pre-approved?
That would be the question.
Did they spend it?
So if they did spend it, they would be held liable.
Right.
And they could get sued because they actually tampered with what the snapshot was of their prior.
Right. They changed the circumstances. That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Home protection plan. You just decide if, you ask them, show them the home protection plans, tell them that we are not salespeople for the home protection plans, and then they decide. Sometimes sellers offer them. You would put that there if a seller's offering it. There's all kinds of pamphlets for that in the office. Other provisions. Okay, hang on. This agreement shall be for the benefit of be binding upon the parties hereto, their heirs, successors, legal representatives, and assigned. This agreement constitutes the sole and entire agreement between the parties hereto, and no modification of this agreement shall be binding unless signed by all parties. No, so like on a repair proposal, only one side signs a proposal. Never have two sides sign a proposal. If two sides sign a proposal, then then it becomes part of this, even though it says that it's not part of this. If both parties sign, it is. No representation, promise, or inducement not included to this agreement shall be binding upon the party hereto. Is hereby agreed that both the buyer and the seller, that any real estate agent working with or representing either party shall not have the authority to bind the buyer, seller, or any assignee to a contractual agreement unless specifically authorized in writing with this agreement. Can't just do it on our own. We work for the buyer, we work for the seller at their direction. Any assignees shall fulfill all the terms and conditions of this agreement. The parties hereby authorize either the licensee to insert the time and the date of the receipt of the notice of acceptance for final offer. That's the binding agreement time. We've been authorized. The foregoing time and date will be referred to for the convenience as the binding agreement date for the purpose of establishing performance deadlines. Okay. Survival clause. There's things that are supposed to be performed after closing. It's called survival, and they survive the closing and delivery. Governing law and venue. We have to abide by the state laws. Time is of the essence. Time is of the essence. If people aren't doing things like they're supposed to, time is a time of the essence. Now listen, that means that if I've been trying to get in touch with you for 24 hours, that's probably too long. The time of the essence, really, in the law of Tennessee, they've stated it means 3 days.
Mm.
Kind of an interesting scenario there. That's just food for thought. Nothing I know. It's just something that I was told by an attorney. So I'm not an attorney, but that's what they had told me.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just about survival clause. I don't exactly know what that means.
Okay, so I flipped a house a while back on Verbena, and
Mhm.
on Verbena we had a driveway that needed to be installed. But to get the permit for the driveway, because I knew that it was raining, I needed it to survive. So we put in there that we were going to do the driveway and that it was going to be after closing. And I had some specific things that I had to meet. So that particular part of the contract survived until it was completed. The way
Okay.
that we did that is we put $10,000 in escrow to complete that particular thing. And then we went over and we had to check off those boxes. And if we didn't, and so $10,000, it only cost us like $3,000. But $10,000, if I didn't put the driveway in, the buyer, within a certain amount of time, the buyer was privy to that money.
Got it.
That's a survival clause. It happened after closing. Terminology. This is probably the most important part of the contract to me. And every time I start dealing with deadlines, this is where I have to go. As context may require in the agreement, the singular shall mean plural and vice versa. All pronouns shall mean and include the person's entity, firm, and or corporation on which they relate. So if it's saying agent, it also means brokerage, it also means firm. The masculine shall mean the feminine and vice versa. And 4, the term days throughout this agreement shall be deemed calendar days ending in 11:59 local time unless otherwise specified in this agreement. Local time shall be determined by the location of the property. Super important, because sometimes if you go right over into Rome County, we're in Central Time.
Mhm.
So
Right.
you need to know what is the time zone at that particular property, not where you are, not where your client is. In the event of a performance deadline, other than the closing date, date of possession, and completion of repair deadline, and an offer expiration date occurs, if they occur on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a legal holiday, the performance deadline shall extend to the next following business day. It is very difficult for people to understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. An offer, so it says, other than the closing date, date of possession, completion date, and offer expiration date occurs Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, the performance deadline shall go to the next business day. Other than the closing date, date of possession, completion of repair deadline, and offer expiration date occurs on. Okay, the way that I'm reading this is that all of these deadlines must happen on the day that they're supposed to happen.
Mhm.
But say that a performance deadline on ordering an appraisal and it's 14 days and it ends on a Saturday,
Mhm.
then you have until Monday.
Goes to the Monday.
Goes to the Monday. In the event of a performance deadline, other than these that are listed. Now, I mean, before,
Other than the closing.
other than the closing date, date of possession, completion repairs, and offer expiration. All of those things now.
Okay.
happen the day that they're supposed to happen.
Okay.
In calculating any time period under this agreement, the commencement shall be the following day of the initial date. Binding agreement is day 0. The next day is day 1. We have the responsibility to cooperate, correct clerical errors, notice, and these are all a lot of legal stuff. So you know that there's a risk of loss. There's equal housing. So risk of loss, a house burns down while you're under contract. How do you determine if you are required to move forward? If the on line 433, if the casualty loss prior to closing exceeds 10% of the purchase price. Okay. So if the loss takes away that amount, which a fire would, and they can't make it right, then you can terminate. We practice equal housing on 435. So on 437, if any portion or provision of this agreement is held or adjudicated to be invalid or enforceable for any reason, if your person was drunk, okay, this is the ability for them to back out because it becomes invalid. 442, alternative dispute resolution. You can use a mediator under the mediation amendment if you decide to make that part of your contract. Contract for construction. This agreement or any uncertainty or ambiguity herein is not to be construed against any party, but shall be construed as if the parties to this agreement jointly prepared this agreement. So it's not you against me, it's we're in this together. So when people say, well, this is what it says, and you say, well, this is what it says, you should be saying, we're in this together. Let's try to make this work. Especially in times like now when everybody is so on edge. 446 section headings. They're here, they're just references. What is in it is what matters. These are the seller's additional obligations. They are to disclose in writing any knowledge of injection well, percolator test, if it's in a PUD, and make everything available. Method of execution. Digital signatures are fine. And notification can be by fax. And then you would put exhibits and addendas. Exhibits and or addendas attached here to listed below or referenced herein are made part of this agreement. Some people say, well, you should put lead-based paint there. Well, it says under the lead-based paint that the lead-based paint addendum is part of this agreement. So why would you put it there?
Right.
It already says that it's part. But say that you needed to do an FHA-VA amendment to the contract, it doesn't say that. So you'd put it there. Okay. And then anything that you feel like needed to be put. So special stipulations. Under special stipulations for this particular client, my client is going to say closing to be 25 days from execution. And so the closing date's going to be left blank. Is that legal? It is. We have a closing date. It's 25 days from execution. As long as we have a closing date, it's legal to be left blank. We're also going to say that the seller authorizes the buyer to activate the utilities for all inspections seller will not activate utilities. in their name. Okay. So why did I talk about that? Because it says in the there that the seller's responsible for getting the utilities on. I want to make sure that we are covering the seller if we don't have our utilities on. Maybe if it's just a normal thing, we want the seller to pay closing cost. Right?
You have to put that in there if you've already put it under the
I do
already.
because people don't read.
Okay.
You don't have to, but I make sure they know it. We're gonna put an offer limit, and you don't have to have an offer time limit on 478. It can be open until you withdraw your offer. But if you're going to be in multiple offers, maybe you only want to give them 12 hours, or maybe you only want to give them 4 hours. You're gonna make sure that you sign here about wiring instructions, and then you're going to sign appropriately, hopefully through AuthentiSign, and then you're going to do your binding agreement date here. Now, binding agreement date has always been the last person that has been notified, but lately people just don't care. They do whatever. So just make sure that your binding agreement date and their binding agreement date is the same.
Okay.
Super, super important. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah. I
This
think
has been
so.
very helpful. This has
Yes.
been very helpful.
Today?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
I really appreciate you doing this because this has been very helpful.
Okay, so that is going to be that particular one. I'm going to figure out what I can do with the recording. On Tuesday, Tuesday at 12, we're doing transaction desk. How to use the wizard. So there's multiple things that you can do for transaction desk, but we're going to learn how to do the wizard. You will get another invitation for that. Block off that time if it's something you need. Okay, because it's going to be long, just like this one was long. So block it off, and then I'm going to try to do one for Friday of next week, but I don't know what exactly education I'm going to do. So if you guys decide that you want something else on Friday of next week, shoot it at
Listing.
me. Go over that.
Listing agreement. I haven't done that yet.
So, let's go over that. I want you to feel like we're interacting. I actually love this more than I like actually face to face.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to, you can pause and get up and go do whatever you need to do, and you can be home.
Yep.
So I like face to face, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it can make it a little hectic.
Yeah, definitely.
So hopefully we can